Redditos, who went out for cigarettes and never came back. Why did you leave? Where did you go? What is life like for you now? Story 1. Sort of. My cousin went for a walk once. He was dating this woman who was just an awful human being. She got pregnant, swore it was his, and once the kid was born, the state went after him for child support as he wasn't on the birth certificate, even though they were living together. Anyways, the paternity test came back showing it wasn't his, and she flipped her lid, just lost it. He asked her to calm down and said he wanted to take a walk to cool off. He left everything he owned, minus the clothes on his back and his wallet, and went for a walk that he never came from. A few years back, the kid found him. He was 16 or 17 and went on some giant rant about him being a bum and a punk arse and whatever other nonsense. My cousin told him he wasn't his dad. The paternity tests show that, and he had no idea why she told him he was the father and abandoned them. Kid left a whole hell of a lot more confused than he showed up, I think. Story 2. I was living with my parents. I was 17. They told me to leave, then tried to stop me from leaving. I have been in an abusive relationship with my mom and my stepdad for years. Friends helped me load the car. That was 12 years ago. Never been back. There are times when the only thing you can do is walk away and never come back to people like that. Story 3. I have never left, but my brother has. One morning 2 years ago, I woke up with a color hangover. Rolled over in bed, checked my phone and saw several missed calls and a couple of voicemails from my mother and sister, along with a text message from my dad. Call me. The first voicemail was from my sister, sobbing through the phone. She said, for the sake of the story, let's call my brother Tom. Tom just tried to commit suicide. He wrote us all a letter and just call me, please. Whoa, this can't be real. Then my mom's voicemail. Tom attempted suicide last night. We haven't been able to reach him, but we suspect he might be heading your way if you see him. If you see him, call the police. We need to make sure he is safe. Oh, crap. This is definitely real. We all somewhat suspected depression from him, but this was unexpected. Anyways, I got out of bed, put some clothes on. I opened the blinds and I peek out the window, as if on cue. Tom's shitty old 96 four-door. He was flustered, barely spoke to me, but told me he was leaving for California. Refusing to turn him into the police, I bought him lunch, filled up his gas tank, and then I gave him all of the $26 I had on me and wished him the best of luck. He was back home within 2 weeks, remorseful and embarrassed. I'm glad he's back. Hey, you tell your brother, sometimes we all want to drive a rusty old Post to California and leave it all behind. Story 4. Mom cornered me in the bathroom after chasing me around the house. Told me to punch her. When I tried to leave, punched me instead. I said I'd call the cops. She said she'd do the same, as she is done with my ex-stepdad. Tell him I punched her, and it will be her word versus mine. Next morning, got into a broken Ford that was still on her name, even though it was mine, went to get the oil changed, told the guy how long he thinks the car could make it. He said I'd be lucky to make it a block, wouldn't go into reverse, among other things. All the same, I thought, I'm only going forward. 3 days later, I drove from California to Maryland and spent about 5 years without contact. Reconnected, foolishly thinking people change. People don't change. Last I heard from her, she wanted me to sign over my apartment in Russia so she could sell it and give me the money. I told her I'd happily sign it over, but she didn't need to pretend she'd give me a dime. Like one of the top comments in here, I've also been working since the age of 12, albeit for much less than $8 an hour when I started, paper route, etc. Only reconnected because I have sisters, but the brain swishing she's done against me is done. Both sisters suicidal. One is pregnant at age 18, failing grades. Neither will take me up on my offers to help. I make 50 plus an hour, tutoring strangers. I'm the pariah who left and traveled the world. But I'm a loser because, well, frick this Fred. Frick you, Mom. You're not a loser. Frick your mom. I just hope your sisters will be okay. Story 5. I was living with a very mean and controlling girlfriend. If it wasn't her way or all about her, she threw a fit. One day I had enough and said I was going to the store and just kept driving. I literally drove for 12 hours and showed up at a friend's house 5 states away and asked if I could crash on his couch. I called my boss and said I wanted to quit. He was pretty cool about it. He knew my girlfriend and actually set me up with a job in my new city. I have never spoken to my ex since. Soon after my relocation, I met my now wife, and I could not be in a better relationship. Best thing I ever did. The woman was driving you crazy. What else could you do to protect yourself? Story 6. I ran away from my family, my mom, and whatever family is attached to it. I feel so much better. I resented the bullshit my mom would pull on me. She once got me pretty screwed around and told everyone I was abusing her finances, etc. She told me to my face she was going to lie and get away with it. And she did. And that was pretty much the family dynamic I was caught up in. When I called her an abuser, she couldn't handle it. It felt good to leave and not look back. I got a new job in a new place and changed numbers. Story 7. Said I was going to uni. My sister dropped me off at the station, said my goodbyes, and left the country. Parents and sisters were abusive and manipulative. Lived in fear for many years since they threatened to shoot me if they found me. I struggled a lot with alcohol for years and self-hurt, but I'm happily married and don't think of them as family at all. Family are people who care about you, love you, and stand by you no matter what, whether biological family or not. Story 8. Parents were split and hated each other and would always put me in the middle. The drugs and alcohol they were both doing didn't help. Got kicked out of each of their places and went back and forth over some shitty circumstances involving them wanting all of my money to live with them. Them playing the guilt card on each other that they took me in when the other kicked me out. Got a steady retail job that I had to work 6 to 7 days a week at odd hours to get full time. 2 weeks before Christmas, Mom said her place wasn't a truck stop and I couldn't come and go at all hours of the night and that I had to leave. Heard similar from her and didn't want to go to Dad's again, so I called some family and they all refused to take me in because my mom had called and told them I hit her. Since I was still in the same house, I told her she was a horrible person, but an even worse mother, and left. Grandma knew parents were crazy, so she helped me as much as she could. Still get phone calls, emails, Facebook messages asking me when I'm going to stop being a prick so we can be a family again. Have seen both since, invited some friends through Facebook to things that they in turn invited my parents to. Finally, nutted up and told them both to get the frick out of my life. Mom still leaves me, drunk, high, crying voicemails in the middle of the night, either telling me she loves me or that I'm all that's wrong in her life. Dad sends me emails telling me to get the stick out of my ass because I'm still his son. Still spend time with my grandma. Friends' parents mean more to me than my own ever did. Now I've got a full-time job, an awesome dog, working on doing better in life in general, and trying to move into a place solo. Blood is not thicker than water. Will never speak to either of them again if I can help it. No regrets. I told her she was a horrible person, but an even worse mother, and left. Just reading that felt so satisfying. Story 9. I was left. My dad and my mom had a fight. My dad left. Then he killed himself. On one hand, I have no memories of him. I was too young. And I am very sympathetic to mental illness and suicidal ideation. I have had bouts of serious depression in my life. On the other hand, his absence, the lack of dad, left a huge gaping hole in my life. The strangest part is when I turned the age he was when he killed himself. I'm 36 and I'm older than my dad ever was, and I still feel young, like I have many years ahead of me. I wish I had had the opportunity to know him. Everything I know about him is someone else's memory. Thanks for giving me space to share this. That's a terrible trauma for a kid to have to endure. Story 10. I left my home like this. One night, I just packed the essentials into my backpack, walked to a train station, and got on a train to Newport News, Virginia, from Pasco, Washington. No one knew I was gone until 3 o'clock the next morning. It was to be with a girlfriend my family was totally 100% against. That was a year ago. It's all working perfectly. I am happier now than I ever have been before. Hey, I'm from Newport News. Glad you're a happy man. It's cool things worked out. Story 11. I don't know if this counts, but when I was about 19, I was in a terrible position. All of my friends were doing meth regularly. I had put out thousands of dollars to bail friends from jail and to try to help them out. The girl I was dating was lying to everyone she knew about our relationship. My uncle called me in the middle of all this and offered me a job on the other side of the country. I had my car packed and was heading there within 12 hours. I heard from the girl I was dating about 2 weeks later. She called crying, telling me she went to my house and I wasn't there and wanted to know where I was. I told her I had moved, and she told me it wasn't my choice to make, that I should have consulted her. I never heard from any of the people I had considered friends. I heard some of them went to jail, some had kids, some disappeared. I moved back to the town I left about 5 years later, and everything has been relatively okay since then. Sometimes I see people I used to know, and sometimes they recognize me. But mostly, I keep to myself and spend time with better people than those I left years ago. You should have talked to your girlfriend first before just taking off. Why did she lie about you? Story 12. Throwaway for good reason. I've always lived in an abusive home, both mentally and physically, and never saw a proper way out. I started working at 14 years old in a convenience store for $8 an hour and hid all of the money I made in a locked container in a nearby wooded park area. I did this because my parent would have taken my money if they knew I was working at all. By the time I turned 18, I had close to $10,000 saved up and had finished high school. I was supposed to start university that year, but early on in the summer, I waited until my parents went out to work, found and took all of my documents, unenrolled out of the university program I was supposed to be in, and left. I took a bus to Alberta, and I'd been living here since doing labor. It's been a year and a half, and they haven't searched for me yet. Not that I'm aware of, at least. How is my life now? I'm poor, barely getting by, but at least I'm living alone and happier than I was before. Story 13. Left my family close to 5 years ago to move to California to start a new life. I was 400 pounds, living a lifestyle of prescription drugs and drinking at 17 with my family. I was good in high school and even went to college early, but wasn't able to secure a loan there to continue past the first year. Dropped my crap life there and came here. It was very rough for a time, but I'm a lot better now. I had some help from my adoptive father, but paid my way aside from the ticket here. I live on my own now and manage an office selling printer parts and various other money makers online. I started my own business last year and have been paying out of pocket to continue school here because the college I went to back home wouldn't release my transcript. I've lost a great deal of weight and am away from any unhealthy addictions. My family is for the most part very cross with me. My mother died 2 years ago, nearly, exactly. I had planned to go back for her birthday, tomorrow incidentally, in 2013, but she died 2 weeks prior to it. The only regret I have is leaving that door open. I like to think she'd be proud of where I went. Oh man, just remember you did what you had to do. I know my username doesn't reflect it, but I'm a mom of 2 boys. Every time they do something that reflects their independence in their place of this world as a man, it's the only goddamn thing in the world that could make me happy, proud into my whole life, worth living. She understood what you did, my friend. There is no way she couldn't have. Story 14. My mother left me at her door. I would visit every Saturday for a few hours. Then she wasn't there. After 10 plus years of extreme hate towards her, my uncle enlightened me. He said, maybe she left you for the better. Turns out she has extreme mental issues, drug abuse. It's amazing how few words can change your life. Your uncle was right. Your mom was afraid of herself. She wasn't in control. Story 15. I was 21. On my 3rd year of college, getting drunk and high on pills every single night, puking every single morning, freaking guy after random guy. Had just had an abortion, 98 pounds and barely scraping by in my classes. One day, I woke up and felt so unbelievably sick and tired of the way I was living, I considered ending my life. Instead of killing myself, I packed up as much as I could fit in my car, while my housemates were in class work and moved to North Carolina to live by the beach. I called my parents and told them what I was doing, which broke their hearts, which broke my heart. But I still come home for some holidays. I stayed in a cheap, disgusting motel for 2 months before I saved enough at my waitress job to get an apartment 40 minutes from the beach. I'm currently married to a wonderful man, completely sober, finished my degree, and have a baby due in December. I can truly say I'm happy. Story 16. American that moved to Australia for 2 years. Got a girl pregnant. Fell in love. Saw her for the horrible person that she really was, but stuck it out. After the baby was born, I had to be sure he was mine. The test came back showing no paternal match. I confronted her. We fought. She swore up and down it was a bad test. Wanting to believe it, I scheduled another test for the 3 of us to go in. $800 later, 2 days before the test, she played dumb and said she never agreed to that. Told me to get out of their life and that her child was not the science experiment. I stayed with a friend a couple of days and came back. She acted like nothing happened and wanted to just move on. Another test was no longer an option in her book. It was the hardest decision of my entire life, and it still makes me sick to think about. A week later, I scheduled a flight back to California. I've been back for 4 years now. We had talked a bit over the year after I left, but just went back to her wanting to fight. After some antidepressants and heavy drinking, I'm finally starting to feel whole again. I look at the world very differently now. You should read your comments in 1 year and see how far you moved along. Good luck, bro. Story 17. Left home shortly before high school graduation. Awful living situation. My parent was in town and told me to go home while she stayed in town. I went home and packed my stuff and left. Returned the car with a note, and no one even bothered to call, text me for a week. The agony of living with a dysfunctional family. Best thing to do is leave for good. Click on one of the videos on the screen now, or Karen will sue you.